New York Giants veterans report for training camp on July 25th at Quest Diagnostics Training Center in East Rutherford as the Giants look to rebound from their worst season since 2003 with a new GM and coaching staff. We'll get you up to date on the depth chart and all the new faces as we preview training camp for the New York Giants by going one-on-one with Ryan Dunleavy, Giants beat reporter for NJ Advanced Media at NJ.com on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. It's Monday, July 9th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room as we preview training camps for the 2018 season. And we continue today. This is our second one today. San Francisco earlier. And right now we're going to talk Giants football with Ryan Dunleavy, beat reporter for NJ Advanced Media at NJ.com. And, of course, the NJ stands for New Jersey. Ryan, thanks for helping us talk New York Giants football today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
All right, Ryan, so am I. I am a Jet fan, so any Giant fans out there listening, and I'm sure there's a bunch of them, trust me, I am going to leave my biases on the deck. I'm going to be professional. And I don't live in the area anymore anyway, and I don't live with my dad anymore anyway, who was a season ticket holder for the Giants. So I have nothing against the Giants as much as I did when I was growing up. But tell me, how long have you been with NJ.com, Ryan?
2 years. I did Rutgers football at first and started on the Giants, right around the end of last season.
Okay, and how long were you covering Rutgers for?
I did Rutgers for 7 years. I did 7 years at the Asbury Park Press up in New Jersey for 5 years, and then switched over to NJ.com, Star Ledger. So Rutgers football, I was there for the whole transition into the Big Ten and all that. It was a pretty exciting time up, not a lot of big-time college football in the Northeast.
No. It was definitely tough growing up as a college football fan in that area. I tried to root for Rutgers. It was tough. I mean, they were never on TV, so that was a real bummer. But when Schiano took over, I was more than ecstatic about the possibilities, and it was just an incredible ride, and I feel like they're on their way again. So I'm pretty excited about what's going on with the program and their move to the Big Ten, obviously. So, do you still get an opportunity? I mean, did being in the area, how long have you lived in the area? Have you been there your whole life?
Yeah, I grew up my whole life. Jersey born, went to Rutgers, covered Rutgers, covering the Giants.
Awesome.
Other than vacations, I've never been outside the borders.
Okay, so you're still a Rutgers fan then? That's great, excellent. I know you can't say that, right?
Fan. I'm a Rutgers graduate, but I'll follow the team closely even now that I'm not doing it because I know a lot of good people who work at that university.
All right, well, let's talk about the Giants, and let's first of all talk about the transition. And again, as I said at the open, wow, you have to go back to 1983, the last time the Giants had a season where they won as little as 3 games. That's actually a good thing for a franchise and a fan base, but things haven't been all that great over the last several years. It finally came to a head last year, so the changes. Dave Gettleman comes in. Talk about Dave Gettleman, who of course was there for so long. I think 15 years he was with the organization prior. Pat Shurmur. This is a big opportunity for him. So how's the transition going? Everybody wants to talk about Eli and Barkley, but how's everything going with Shurmur and Gettleman?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to talk about the new era, you have to talk about the last era, and it ended in a total disaster. I mean, Ben McAdoo lost the locker room, and Jerry Reese's drafts just didn't leave the Giants with enough depth to withstand the injuries that they suffered, and they suffered a ton of them last year. Totally, they flipped the script and brought in Gettleman, who's kind of the anti-Reese in a lot of ways. He's very old school. Somebody asked me today if he's going to have them play with leather helmets. That's a joke, of course, but it's not that far-stretched. He's an old school, ground-and-pound kind of guy. Drafted a running back with his number 2 pick, which a lot of people wouldn't do, and hired Shurmur, who was 9-23 in Cleveland, but everybody's 9-23 or worse in Cleveland.
Worse.
So I don't think you can hold that against him and get them both. What's interesting is they both got fired, right? Shermer got fired in Cleveland, Gettleman got fired in Carolina, but Gettleman got his team to a Super Bowl, so he did have some success, and obviously Shermer is coming off being an NFL Assistant Coach of the Year for his the job he did with the Vikings. So they both have some track records, and I think that's what the Giants wanted. They wanted guys who have been there, done that.
How about Shermer's personality and how you think he has and will take and deal with the New York media and the fans?
I think that's an interesting point because we had heard, that he was a little sensitive, I guess, in Cleveland. And if you're sensitive in Cleveland, that's not going to work in New York. It's not going to play. It's not a town where you can be sensitive. I think he's handled every potential landmine well so far. Now, listen, he hasn't had a loss yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a holdout yet. But he's dealt with some sticky situations. I mean, nonstop questions about Odell Beckham's future. Damon Harrison didn't show up to a lot of the voluntary practices. The national anthem stuff. The Eric Flowers position change. He's had a couple of off-season landmines, and I think he's handled them all well. The thing I think that sticks out about Shermer so far, and it's more about the players than it is the media or the fans, but the media and the fans are going to like this about him because it has to do with the players, is he's very communicative. He's a pretty straight shooter. He doesn't, he's not exactly going to go up there and give you a John Gruden-esque headline quote or whatever, but seems to say what he means and mean what he says, and I think the players, fans, and media like whether you're gregarious or not. I think everybody can respect a straight shooter.
All right. Now, what about the defense? Because this is interesting. We've as long as I can remember, the Giants through of course we can go back to Parcells and that mini dynasty, but from the Coughlin era, it's been a while. It's been a 4-3 defense. So will they run more 3-4 base? How is that going to work out? What do you think we're going to see also based on personnel?
When they're in a base defense, it'll be a 3-4, which is a pretty significant change. Like you said, it's probably been 2 decades, maybe 3, since they were primarily a 3-4 defense. But I also think they're going to spend, as most teams do, 50% of their time in nickel, in which case then you're not really in a 3-4. Then you're really in, either a 4-2 or a 3-3 or something like that.
Sure.
But when they are in a 7-man front, it'll be a 3-4. They'll move Olivier Vernon from defensive end to stand up outside linebacker position. He played with the Dolphins and suits him pretty well.
Okay.
He's really their only established pass rusher. It's probably the biggest void on this team, which is crazy when you think of the Giants of the 2000s with Strahan and Jason Pierre-Paul and Justin Tuck and O.C. Umenyiora. The Giants don't have, I think Vernon has 44 sacks, and the rest of the front 7 starters combined have 16 in their careers.
Wow.
Combined. Now that's including a rookie and including some other guys, but point being, they don't have a lot of guys who have gotten a lot of sacks in the NFL at the NFL level in their careers other than Vernon. So I think they're going to have to get some creative with some blitzes, and they've got the right man to do that because that's James Betcher's thing as the coordinator.
Well, let's might as well start with the defense, and they bring in Martin, and he, of course, was with Betcher in Arizona, so he's going to fit in really nicely, Kareem, with the scheme. They also, of course, have Snacks, who's maybe the best nose tackle in the game, so they're fine there. Tomlinson was a good pickup last year. And they added and also Morrow comes over from Arizona, but they also added a couple of rookies, including B.J. Hill. And B.J. Hill is a real versatile player, but he's the most intriguing young player as new guy as far as I'm concerned. But they're 3 or 4 new faces to the defensive line. It still looks like there's talent there, of course.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think there's talent, but like you said, B.J. Hill's a guy they're really high on, their third-round pick. I think he'll start on one of the ends of the 3-4. I think Tomlinson will start on the other end of the 3-4, and Snacks is in the middle. And like you said, he's probably the best nose tackle run stopper in the league. So that's your 3 across, and then your 4 in the middle, 4 at the second level would be Kareem Martin on one outside, Vernon on the other, and B.J. Goodson and Alec Ogletree in the middle. Ogletree's a guy they traded for from the Rams. They have high expectations for as a potential 100-tackle guy and a leader, maybe even a captain. He'll wear the headset, the microphone on game days. But there's some depth questions. I mean, what happens when you need to rotate guys out or if there's an injury? They have Josh Morrow, who they got from the Cardinals, but he's suspended for the first 4 games for a substance abuse, performance-enhancing drugs violation. So he, and Lorenzo Carter's a guy they drafted in the 3rd round. They have high expectations for as a pass rusher.
Yep.
But there's not a Kerry Wynn's a guy who's back, who's played 4 years with the Giants. He's more of a run stopper. But again, like I said, they have a lot of guys, just not a lot of guys who have been there, done that. You mentioned Kareem Martin. Even he was primarily a special teams guy for his first 3 years in the NFL, and then kind of had a breakout year last year. So, is that the new Kareem Martin? If it is, then the Giants got a pretty good player. Or was that, the ceiling for him? And in that case, then he could end up, being passed over by Lorenzo Carter eventually during his rookie year.
Yeah, and there's a couple other intriguing young guys, including Avery Moss. So this is a big camp for Moss after not getting up and being able to play too much last year. So, and the other kid, Romeo Aquara, he's got some potential too. I mean, you tell me.
Yeah, Moss, it's a good time probably to touch on injuries, which is 2 of their biggest injuries are Avery Moss hasn't practiced at all.
Okay.
He's, run on the sideline, jogged, whatnot during the OTAs and mini camp, but did not take any reps. And R.J. McIntosh, their 5th-round pick, another guy who's on the defensive line, could be a inside tackle or a hand on the ground end. Hasn't practiced since they drafted him because of a minor medical condition, is what the team called it.
Okay.
They haven't confirmed that it's thyroid related, but he was diagnosed with a thyroid condition at the NFL Combine. So you got to think those 2 things are related. So yes, Moss and McIntosh are 2 guys that if they're healthy, well then there's suddenly a lot more depth than I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But until those guys practice, I don't know that you can count on either of those 2 guys.
Yeah, so you can clearly see the depth issues as far as what you're going to want in a 3-4, and you're going to want your edge rushers, your linebackers, potential rush the quarterback, and that's just the issue right now when you take a look at what they've got. But that's why when I looked at the team in general, I know there seems to be a lot of excitement in some areas. Some people think this could be a really good season for the Giants. They're all excited about Barkley and so forth. But on the other hand, as we go through the rest of the depth chart, you can notice there's just still a lot of depth issues that it's not going to happen in 1 year. As we move to the secondary, wow. I mean, once you get past Apple, Jenkins, Collins, and Thompson, I mean, these are all new guys.
Yep, that's it. You nailed it. It's Apple, Jenkins. So Apple and Jenkins are the starting corners. Thompson or Andrew Adams, they're both 3rd-year guys. They'll be the free safety. And then Collins is an all-pro or Pro Bowl caliber strong safety. It's a pretty good starting lineup. And then, like you said, it's a bunch of quantity that's untested quality at the rest of it. I mean, except William Gay. I mean, William Gay is obviously an 11-year veteran. He was the nickel back during the spring. I expect him to hold on to that job, but he'll certainly be challenged. Guys like Curtis Riley had a good camp.
Okay.
Grant Haley, who was an undrafted free agent. The Giants gave a big signing bonus to. I think if they had a 6th or 7th round pick, which they didn't, it might have been Grant Haley. I think they were thrilled to see him undrafted. So he's a guy who could challenge for the slot. Michael Thomas is a special teams ace from the Dolphins, who I think will get some reps at safety or in the slot. But yeah, there's a lot of young guys. Ryan Stewart, Curtis Riley, Grant Haley, a lot of the Dante Dion, a lot of these guys who are pretty interchangeable names right now, who are going to have see who rises from the pack in the training camp and preseason games.
And so maybe the biggest one, though, as far as starting, is going to be Thompson against Adams.
Yes, as far as a starting position battle, yeah.
Okay.
Free safety, Darian Thompson and Andrew Adams, both third-year guys. Adams started most of the year as a rookie when Thompson was hurt. Thompson started pretty much, I think, all 16 games last year, but didn't have a great year. So I think they're looking for one of those two guys to, again, separate from the pack of each other there. And then Michael Thomas, who's a veteran safety from the Dolphins, 6-year guy they got as a free agent, mostly because he can play special teams really well.
Yeah.
And that was an area of concern for the Giants big time over the last couple of years. I think you'll see him in there as well, but not necessarily as the starter. I think it's Adams and Thompson for the starting role.
Yeah, and Thompson, basically, he's got to stay healthy, right?
Correct.
That's the trick with him. What, does he miss, like 14 games in his 2 years?
I think he missed 14 as a rookie. And then he played last year, but he didn't play at the level that they were expecting. The Giants have had somewhat of a curse with their third-round picks in the Jerry Reese era. They haven't really gotten much out of their third-round picks, and it's time for Thompson to see if he's going to fall the way of like O.I. Diggy-Zua, or if he's actually going to step up and be, what you're hoping for out of your third-round pick, which is, a starting caliber player.
Before we move over to the offense, you mentioned the special teams, and this is one of those situations that you're going to get on rosters that have a lot of changeover, not a lot of depth, and that's why I said it's more than a 1-year process. And do you think we're going to see is Rose, the same kicker punter combination? And besides that, do you think personnel wise they've done enough to bring in guys, under the radar guys that can, especially you mentioned Michael Thomas, that can do the job?
Yeah, I mean, look, they focus. Well, I'll start with the back half of your question, which is like coverage guys and the guys who aren't the actual specialists. That was a main focus of everything they did in the offseason. If you look at wide receiver, Cody Latimer and Russell Shepard are two guys they brought in who are special teams guys. Michael Thomas, Curtis Riley in the defensive backfield, guys who are special teams guys. They emphasize special teams players. They, like I said, they were terrible on special teams for a long time now. Missed tackles, bad punts, bad kicks. They changed coordinators. Thomas McGahee comes in from Carolina. He works obviously with Gettleman there. So I think they'll be much improved on special teams. They'll be very disappointed if they're not much improved on special teams. And then the kicker and punter game, Rosas is the favorite. He's got an incredibly strong leg. His question is accuracy. He was 18 of 25 on field goals last year. That's not going to cut it.
Nope.
But his leg is incredible. I mean, he'll make 50 yards.
Yeah.
It's not a problem of reaching it from 50 yards, even in the Meadowlands wind.
Yeah.
And then they got a new punter. Riley Dixon is a guy they traded for from the Broncos, gave up a 7th-round pick next year for him, and he was impressive by all accounts in the spring. But again, those guys are always on separate practice fields, not really. No one's trying to block the punt or whatever. So he certainly got a leg, and Brad Wing was a major disappointment last year, so that should be an upgrade.
Yeah, Rosas missed 3 extra points, but he was 3 for 3 from 50 or more. So
exactly. That pretty much sums him up right there.
All right, let's talk about the offense, and of course we'll start with Eli. With any quarterback, you have to. I mean, his game is you can run the ball, you can protect them. So on paper, it looks like they've got better protection. And we know if Beckham's healthy, and of course with Barkley on the field, that's going to be huge. So this on paper looks like this is going to be a good chance for Eli to get back, into the swing of things, get his confidence going again, and start looking like the old Eli.
You could make a very strong case that this is the best supporting cast of offensive skill that Eli Manning has had in his career. If you want to argue, then your argument is 06 when he was a third-year player, second-year starter, and the Giants had Tiki Barber, who was a 2,000-yard running back at that point, Jeremy Shockey, who was a Pro Bowl tight end, and the combination of Amani Toomer and Plaxico Burress at wide receiver. That would be your argument. That was a pretty good offense. But Barkley, Evan Ingram at tight end, Odell Beckham at wide receiver, Sterling Shepard at wide receiver should be one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. I mean, I think if you look at maybe the Steelers with Roethlisberger, who came in the same time as Manning and has had a pretty similar career, and what he has with Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Jesse James, the Juju Schuster, I think that's kind of on the high end what the Giants are hoping for.
Yeah, it's sort of like if Eli had Barkley and Odell for the past 6 years combined, like what Ben has had with Bell and Brown. So
correct. I think that's what they're trying to replicate, and just hoping it's not 6 years too late.
Now, what about Latimer? Is he going to have also an opportunity to be get a lot of reps, starting reps, receiver? Because it looked like he started to play some pretty good ball last year for Denver, and I talked about him in the offseason as an intriguing pickup player. So is that the hope?
He'll be their third wide receiver. I'd be surprised if somebody jumped him. I think he will be their third wide receiver. The question is, the Giants under Ben McAdoo were three wide something like 90% of the time. I think that's going to be drastically cut. The third wide receiver under Ben McAdoo was a starter, whether it was Brandon Marshall or Victor Cruz or Sterling Shepard.
Okay.
That's going to drastically cut, I think, under Pat Shurmur. I think you're going to see a lot more fullback or two tight ends, and if you do fullback or two tight ends, then you're only playing two wide receivers. So I think Beckham and Shepard will take, all the reps when it makes sense, when the game's close and when they're healthy and whatnot, it'll be Beckham and Shepard. And then, on a 3rd and 8 or something, they'll bring in Latimer. But
got it.
First, second down, I think you're going to see a lot of two tight end, two wide receiver, and a running back, or one tight end and a fullback. I don't think you'll see a lot of three wide from the Giants unless the down and distance necessitates it.
Does that mean that Red Ellison winds up playing an awful lot, both at tight end and at fullback?
I would think he'll play a lot. Shane Smith's on the roster. He's a fullback. He was on the team last year. I think Ellison will play a lot with Ingram.
Okay.
The Giants have 7 or 8 tight ends on their 90-man roster. Now, obviously, that's going to be cut down to 3 or 4.
Okay.
But that is, I think that's a sign of what they're trying to do. They're not going to cut from 8 to 2.
Sure.
I think that they're going to cut from 8 to 3 or 4 because they plan to play a lot of tight ends. So they're going to get a look at as many of them as possible, whether it's Jarrell Adams, who's been on the team for a couple years, or Kyle Carter, who was with Shurmur in Minnesota, or Scott Simonson, who was with Gettleman in Carolina, or Ryan O'Malley, who's a Jersey kid. They have a bunch of tight ends that they've brought in because tight ends are getting a lot of reps in practice.
Okay. What about, is there a receiver to keep an eye on outside the top 3? Somebody that you think could end up getting more playing time down the road? Somebody that has some talent to watch?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those top 3 we mentioned. I'll give you 2 guys. One is they're both former Broncos. One is Khalif Raymond. I think he has a chance to make a team. Not so much as I don't think he'll get a lot of reps as a wide receiver, but the Giants have a huge hole for returner after releasing Dwayne Harris, punt and kick returner. Raymond is 5'9", maybe, probably more like 5'7".
Okay.
Shifty guy who has a lot of return experience. I think he could carve out a niche for them in that role, and then your 5th or 6th receiver always ends up in some sort of package. So,
yep.
And then really the guy to watch is Hunter Sharp, who had a really good spring. I mean, he was probably one of the 3 or 4 biggest surprises of spring. When everything was going nuts for the Giants last year, it was kind of overlooked that the Giants picked up this kid Hunter Sharp from the Broncos in December. No one was talking about that because it was about Eli's benching or Eli Apple's, suspensions,
okay,
or who was going to be the next GM. And no one really thought, no one was spending a lot of time on Hunter Sharp.
No,
but he caught a touchdown pass in the finale from Manning. and then I think kind of used that to gain some confidence and a rapport maybe with Eli, and I think he had a really good spring as far as a guy who seemed to always be getting open, and when the ball came his way, he didn't drop it. So he's a guy who I think could, steal some of those third receiver reps from Latimer.
Yeah, and he also doesn't Sharp have some return ability as well. I don't know if the Giants
Correct.
plan on giving him a shot there, but I remember him. He was a very productive receiver out of Utah State. I mean, I'm a big college football fan, so I watch all those games, and I used to remember, he was a big player for them, especially his last year or two.
Yep, exactly. And look, Latimer's a former Bronco, Sharp's a former Bronco, and Raymond's a former Bronco. It's not a coincidence that the Giants wide receivers coach is Tyke Tolbert, who was the former Broncos wide receivers coach.
All right. Running backs, we know about Barkley, Stewart. What kind of reps do you think Stewart's going to get, by the way, especially with Gallman there? And look, we have to take into consideration it's a new. Again, you talk about the new GM and the guys making decisions and coaches. They weren't there when they drafted these guys, but Gallman is an interesting young talent. Any chance that Gallman could even steal some reps away from Stewart?
I think it's a really interesting thing because look, they didn't draft Saquon Barkley with the number 2 pick to take him off the field on short yardage or on third down.
Sure.
Like, that's usually where you put in your backup running back or your scat back or whatever. You usually, it's 3rd and 1. We're going to put in the power guy like a Jonathan Stewart, or, it's 3rd and 6. We're going to put in our pass catcher like Wayne Gallman. No, Saquon Barkley is the short yardage back, and Saquon Barkley is the pass catching back. So I think you're looking at 350 to 400 touches. And when I'm talking touches, I mean carries and reception from Saquon Barkley. So I don't know how much that really leaves for anybody.
Okay.
And it wouldn't surprise me if it was Gallman over Stewart. I mean, Gallman had a pretty good rookie year. He's not much of a pass catcher, but neither is Stewart. Neither one of them has had, neither one of them will wow you with their hands the way Barkley will on a wheel route. So really you're talking about giving Saquon Barkley blows during the course of the game. If he's had 3 or 4 carries in a row, or they're on a long drive, which I think they'll have a lot of long drives because I think even with Odell Beckham, I think they're going to be a run-first offense.
Okay.
So I think you're looking at sporadic carries during the course of the game, and but one thing to keep in mind is when Shermer was calling the plays for the Vikings last year, it was Dalvin Cook. For those first 4 games, Dalvin Cook, the rookie, got a lot of carries.
That's right.
And Latavius Murray, the veteran, who would be maybe the equivalent to Stewart, didn't really get much time until Dalvin Cook's season-ending injury.
Which some people think he was overused. But that's how often they went to him to Cook.
Yeah.
So and who knows? Maybe Shermer will at least early on in Barkley's career, maybe he won't overload him the way he overloaded Cook last year. But I totally understand what you're saying, and that's why you also referenced Pittsburgh and Le'Veon Bell, because Le'Veon Bell never comes out. Yeah. So I think that's what we're going to see with Barkley. Okay, and what about, and of course, besides Eli, you've got Davis Webb and Kyle Lauletta. Again, Webb was drafted by the former regime, and then you've got Lauletta, who's a very intriguing prospect, Senior Bowl MVP. So is this a straight-up battle for the number 2 job, and what do you think about that battle?
It didn't make any sense to me when the Giants drafted Lauletta. I just don't understand it. I still don't really understand it. It's not a knock on Lauletta, who might be a very good player. I just don't understand how when you have other holes, especially offensive tackle, how you use a 3rd-round pick on a quarterback one year and a 4th-round pick on a quarterback the next year. Because essentially, you either took your 3rd-string emergency quarterback in the 3rd round last year or in the 4th round this year. And in those spots, you can get a contributor. So I don't understand the back-to-back rookie quarterbacks. The only way you can explain it to me is the regime change.
Yes.
But I think the current regime really likes Davis Webb. I don't think it's a battle for the number 2 spot. I think if you're at Giants practice, it's hard not to be impressed with Davis Webb. Now, look, he has to prove that he can do it. It's a travesty by the former regime that he didn't get any snaps in a 3-13 season. The joke That was totally mismanaged. But he, if you came back and looked at it, they rave about his preparation. They rave about what he did last year for Eli Manning in terms of scouting reports. They rave about his commitment to being around the facility this offseason, to how quickly he grasped the playbook before practices even started. He had it fully understood. He taught it to himself, essentially. Is there some hyperbole in there? Probably. But if you watch him on the practice field, he'll wow you with his arm strength. He'll throw some interceptions, but that's because of confidence. That's because he has a little of that swagger that quarterbacks can have where he thinks he can make any throw, and he can make a lot of the throws. What you really need to see from Davis Webb is how he reacts to blitzes, how he reacts to live getting hit, how he can be when he's not protected. That's what you really need to see, the stuff that maybe you'll see in the preseason games. Maybe in some, fourth quarters of some regular season games. But I don't think it's a battle for the number 2 spot. Webb is clearly at least 1 year ahead of Kyle Lauletta at this point.
Yeah, in the offseason before the draft, I referenced Webb a lot and said, look, I know everybody's wondering if the Giants are going to take a quarterback or not, but what I was saying was, look, here's Shermer. Shermer was able to get Case Keenum to look like an all-pro. Why can't he get Davis Webb or feel like he can get Davis Webb to do the same thing? Why do you have to go out and get yourself and use that top pick on a quarterback when Eli could be around for a couple more years and you have a Davis Webb and you can go out and get Barkley? So it really didn't make any sense to me, knowing Shermer and knowing Webb's possibilities. But then you throw in Lauletta to the mix, and who knows? Maybe there's maybe one of these guys gets traded. I mean, is that even a possibility?
Webb? Yeah, I think it's a possibility. I don't think it's a possibility this year per se. I mean, usually those guys get traded after they've shown you something.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Look, Hackenberg never showed anybody anything and got traded for a 7th-round pick and got released.
Yes.
The guys who get traded are the guys like AJ McCarron or I don't think he got traded, but the guy like AJ McCarron. Who has, come into a situation, Matt Flynn, the guy who has come into a situation where his quarterback was hurt and played better than people thought he would play.
Sure.
And neither Webb nor Lauletta has done that. Giants can't trade Lauletta right now because otherwise why'd you pick him? You should have just traded him during the draft, and I think they're too high on Webb to trade him. So maybe long-term one of those guys gets traded, but I would think right now that's the polarizing debate around the Giants. Should they have picked Barkley? Should they have picked Sam Darnold? Is Eli going to play one more season? Is Eli going to play 4 more seasons? Because if Eli plays 4 more seasons, then you're really wasting Webb and Lauletta. So,
true.
It's certainly the number one question around the Giants is who's going to be the quarterback in 2019.
Well, interesting that you got the last 2 Senior Bowl MVPs. That's not bad. That's not bad to have that on your team when you got an aging quarterback. Last is the offensive line. Solder brought in, Hernandez drafted. That really boosts up that left side of the line. And Brett Jones, Jerry, and then Flowers. So the biggest, of course, question is Flowers. The left side, though, looks really good, right?
The left side looks very good. Solder, obviously, is the highest-paid offensive lineman in the NFL. Hernandez, I love. I love his attitude. I love. Very, very rarely does a team follow a rookie, but he's got some feistiness and chippiness to him that I think will rub off on even the veterans. That's kind of something that I think has been missing from the Giants' offensive line since the Dave Deal, Chris Snee, Sean O'Hara days. Just like a nastiness that's hard to quantify. So I think the left side looks good. Center's a position battle between Brett Jones and John Halapio. If I had to, I'd probably give Halapio the edge right now, but I think that'll come down to a last week of August kind of thing.
Okay.
Right tackle, Flowers is an interesting case because he was not good at left tackle for 3 years. They're moving him to right tackle. Obviously a lot of the same technique things are still going to be, need to be cured, whether it's bending or feet movement or whatnot, but there's a lot less pressure and scrutiny on your right tackle. So He took every single first-team rep during the practices attended by media in the spring. He didn't rotate. He wasn't part of a position battle. They basically said, here it is, go get him. So I think he'll be the right tackle, and then right guard is Patrick Omame, the guy they signed from the Jaguars. He's a massive human being. It looks like the Incredible Hulk. A guy who's been on, I think he's been on 4 teams in 5 years or something like that. He's never really found a home, which is surprising because they gave him a 3-year, $15 million contract. So they obviously expect him to be their starting right guard for a while. And then you mentioned John Jerry. He could be the odd one out. He's spent 5 years with the Giants.
Okay.
He's been a starter for a long time here, but he was taking second and even some third-team reps in the fall. In the spring. They already made him take a pay cut, restructured his contract, so he could be looking at the odd man out as they've restructured this line, which is strange because he was probably their most consistent offensive lineman last year. That said, Justin Pugh and Weston Richburg were both injured, so when they were gone, it kind of fell on Jerry's shoulders to be the leader. But I think that shows you how much they've overhauled it.
It looks like the biggest issue would be if either Flowers doesn't get it or he gets hurt, because there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of depth at tackle.
Correct. I think they have some depth at guard. Omame and Hernandez as the starters. Jerry, John Greco, who's another veteran who played for Shermer in Cleveland and in St. Louis. Remember St. Louis? Yeah.
Yes.
So Greco and Jalapio, and the loser of the Jalapio Jones battle can also play guard. So they have some depth at guard. Right?
Yeah.
I just gave you 3 backups:
Sure.
Greco, Jalapio, or Jones, and Jerry. And the backups at tackle are question marks. Chad Wheeler started 5 games last year as an undrafted rookie. He was okay. He wasn't great. He was what you'd expect from an undrafted rookie. Nick Becton is a guy who's been around the block a couple times. But really, to me, this was the case I made on the 3rd day of the draft, and I'll still make it sitting here 3 months later, is that 4th-round pick of Kyle Aletta should have been an offensive tackle.
Yes, and so if you would have to think of just maybe one player of significance that if the Giants scooped up during preseason cuts, it would possibly be a tackle, a backup tackle. Yeah,
a right tackle who could maybe swing and play some left if some happened to Solder. But a right tackle to challenge Flowers would be, to me, the number one guy they'd need to scoop up.
Ryan, I appreciate it. Great job. It was nice talking to you, nice meeting you. I look forward to getting an opportunity to talk more about the Giants as we either get closer to the regular season or, of course, during the season. And after what happened last year, I'm sure the Giants can't wait for the fans, can't wait for the new season to begin. There's a lot of hope and optimism, and I'm sure they're going to be a lot more funner as well to cover. So I look forward to talking to you again sometime during the season.
Sure, sounds good. Reach out to me anytime.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. All right, that's Ryan Dunleavy. And again, Ryan covers the New York Giants for NJ Advanced Media at NJ.com. So New Jersey Advanced Media at NewJersey.com. And we'll be talking hopefully to Ryan once again at some point, either before or during the season. And knowing it's New York, there'll be some things to talk about with the New York Giants, and looking forward to it. So what do you think Saquon Barkley is going to go in the fantasy draft? 1? Boy, he can't go 1, can he? You know what? Somebody's going to take him 1. There's going to be a big. I mean, Le'Veon should be 1, but there'll be others. Barkley's going top 3, top 5 at the worst. And, of course, you've got some studs. There ain't no question about it, but Barkley's going to be up there. All right, but we'll get into fantasy a little bit later on. We'll be back again tomorrow to talk New England Patriots football, Washington Redskins football here on the OFN Meeting Room. Thanks for tuning in to the Our-Lads Football Radio Network, where it's never too early to think about the start of the 2018 football season. We'll see you next time.